So do you have a goal or an idea maybe to start a new business, apply for a new job, start an exercise regimen, maybe you want to start creating content, writing a book, and you have been thinking about this goal for weeks, months, maybe even years in some cases. And you go through periods of time where you feel really committed to the goal, you feel really energized about it, you write down tasks in your planner, you tell people that you're going to do it, but for some reason you just don't follow through. So in this video, I'm going to talk about why we don't follow through on our plans, and I will give you some ideas about how you can break this cycle. So spoiler alert, the reason why you don't follow through, it is not because you are lazy. It's not because you are lazy, more than likely. In fact, I never want you to think that about yourself again if that's something that you're telling yourself. But before we get into the video, please like this video, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out when I upload a new video. Okay, so let's get into the conversation. So one of the main reasons why you're probably not following through on your goals is because you are avoiding negative feelings, okay? So if you are moving through your daily life and there is a goal on your mind that you want to accomplish and you've been wanting to do that thing for weeks, months, or maybe even years in some cases, and you have not followed through, you are probably avoiding negative feelings that are attached to that task. So in my experience, this is true when I'm procrastinating on small tasks like responding to emails, folding laundry, or taking out one of my daughter's hair. And it is also true for bigger things like career-related tasks, like revising papers so I can submit them for peer review to be published. I'm a professor and a scholar. Or creating videos for Her Guided Evolution. And when we procrastinate, it's not because we are actually avoiding the thing that we have to do, but it's actually because we are avoiding usually the feelings that come along with it. So let me give you an example. So emails have always been like a thing for me. This is like low-key kind of embarrassing, but emails have always been a thing for me. Even back when I was a master's student in grad school, like to anyone who does not have any sort of issues surrounding like social anxiety or just conversing with other people, this may sound like kind of strange or whatever. And like I said, it's kind of embarrassing. But for me, sending emails has always been something that I would put off and something that I found really draining and just not something I'm ever like super happy about having to do, okay? So the way this shows up for me, for example, I'll plan to respond to all my work emails at 11 a.m., for example. It becomes one of the items in my top 3, like a lot of planners have your top 3, like those items that they want you to designate. So like, have you seen those planners? But yeah, so I'll have my top 3. Anyway, 11 a.m. will roll around. And the next thing I know, when I'm supposed to be responding to emails, I'm on Instagram scrolling or watching YouTube or eating a little snack while mindlessly scrolling through Facebook, for example. And so in this situation, not responding to those emails at 11 a.m. would be a small daily task that would just eat up time and energy later. But what I want to draw attention to here is that it's not actually the process of sitting down and responding to emails from my colleagues or from my students that I'm avoiding. What I'm trying to avoid are actually those feelings that I don't want to feel. So like, I don't want to feel the awkwardness, the uncertainty, the boredom, or the discomfort I feel when I sit down and write emails to my students, colleagues, clients, or whomever. I don't want to sit and contemplate how I should word this email because I'm worrying about how the email is going to sound or how it's going to be communicated through writing. So that's why my brain would rather get lost in scrolling through Instagram stories or watching YouTube videos. So in this example, emails represent all the negative feelings that I have to sort through, navigate, and deal with in order to complete the task, okay? So now let me give you another example from my life that things I don't follow through on and how negative feelings show up and contribute to this. So So I talked about this on my YouTube channel before and on my podcast. I talked about how I procrastinated for years before launching Her Guided Evolution. So I had this idea for a self-development and personal development space for Black women, but I would do all this planning and never follow through on those plans for this space. Like, I would be writing in notebooks, talking to people about aspects of this personal development space, like contemplating plans, but never actually following through on creating the content consistently or reaching out to other entrepreneurs and platforms to collaborate. I would just always stay in like the planning phases of Her Guided Evolution. So when I look back on all that time I spent, which was about 4 to 5 years before I actually started Her Guided Evolution and the space that preceded Her Guided Evolution, when I look back on that time I spent planning, what I realized is what I was actually avoiding were all the negative feelings that I would have to experience in order to create the content and send out correspondence to collaborate with other people who had online platforms, create designs for the branding that were ugly at first that I would have to redo, and then feel the sting of failure because that first design didn't work. So it's actually those negative feelings. I didn't want to feel the rejection of people not wanting to collaborate, or the uncertainty of having to figure out how to import a layout to Divi Builder, or the fear that someone is going to judge me or criticize what I'm doing. So in the case with the email, and as with the case with creating Her Guided Evolution and my podcast, it's the feelings that I was actually avoiding and not necessarily responding to emails or creating content. So if you are struggling to follow through on something, don't metaphorically beat yourself up. Nobody wants to feel bored, awkward, uncertain, or whatever negative feelings that are causing you to not follow through on your goals. And of course, there's more science behind this. Our brains are usually hardwired to keep us safe and to be efficient. So we like to be comfortable. And anytime we try to do something that's in opposition to what we're used to or that comfort, we are going to run into resistance. And that's why I say, if you find something that you are not following through on after weeks, months, or years of planning, something tactical like getting a new planner is probably not going to work, at least not by itself. And I think it's usually something cognitive and conceptual that will help you maneuver past whatever thoughts and beliefs that are coming up for you on a day-to-day basis when you are trying to follow through on certain tasks. So another reason why you may not be following through on your goals or what you intended to do, and I find this is often true with those dreams that scare us, is because you're probably leaning into confusion instead of moving toward clarity. And you will know that you are leaning into or on confusion if you have a goal to launch an online business, for example, but you constantly say things like, I don't have time, or I don't know how to do X, or I'll start when I have X, Y, and Z. And these often keep us stuck and keep us from following through on our plans and our goals. So for example, I don't have time is usually leaning into confusion. And the reason why I think I don't have time is one way we lean into confusion is because it identifies a problem. It allows us to identify a problem without seeking a solution. So we all have things that we have to do with work and family, and that takes up a lot of time for many of us. So I want to validate that. You probably have too much to do a lot of times. Now, having said that, time probably isn't your actual issue. So another way to look at it, instead of thinking, I don't have time, and stopping there, we could be taking a solution-oriented approach that looks at, one, what would it look like to let some things go because I want to create time and space for what's important to me? And or how can I be more efficient in other areas of my life so that I can create the time and the space for goals that are really important to me? So confusion is, I think, one of the ways that we rationalize procrastinating and not following through. And in my experience, when I'm leaning into confusion, it's because it feels a lot safer than moving forward with whatever I decided to do. So when I decided to launch the Her Guided Evolution podcast, I know I was leaning into confusion real heavy when I would spend all this time planning, jotting down ideas without actually executing those ideas. And I know I was leaning into confusion, once again, when I would listen to things related to online podcasting and creating content, but not actually doing the scary stuff like recording the podcast episodes, consistently sharing them on Instagram and other platforms. And I know I'm leaning into confusion when I would use my planners in such a way that I would still end up confused about what I needed to do next, emphasis on next, to make Her Guided Evolution, the podcast or the YouTube channel, whatever, a reality. So a lot of times we are leaning into confusion. We don't even know how we are currently spending our time. We know that we feel rushed. We know that we feel like not grounded and like we never have enough time to breathe. We know we feel overwhelmed and scattered, but we don't really have a clear idea where our time is going day to day and where we are going to place our energy. And so to move from confusion to clarity, first, you need to figure out how you're actually spending your time. And you should identify blocks of free time in your schedule. And then the next thing you would do is identify a goal. Figure out smaller tasks that would lead to that bigger goal. Write out those goals with a clear time and a date for completing them. So I'm interrupting my video to let you know that this process that I'm describing is actually part of what I teach in my one-on-one coaching program called Beyond Productivity. I created this one-on-one coaching program for moms who have flexible work schedules, but they feel really overwhelmed and have little time for self-care and pursuing their goals and their dreams outside of their 9-to-5. So with this program, I teach you how to create a realistic, personalized schedule, and I help you implement systems to help you make progress towards your dreams while managing all aspects of your life with more ease. So if you're interested, go to beyondproductivitymethod.com to get on the wait list. Another reason why you don't follow through on your plans is probably because you may be stuck in a cycle of self-doubt and maybe a little bit of self-sabotage as well. So Brooke Castillo from the Life Coach School podcast talks about the process of setting goals and then not following through on them is one of the ways that we end up losing a lot of confidence in ourselves. And when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. So let's say you are developing a new friendship or relationship with someone and they keep saying, hey, we're going to meet up at 7 o'clock on Friday, okay? But every time they make a plan with you, they flake on those plans, you can't get up with them, and they're just never around. So if you think about it from that perspective, it makes sense that if we set plans with ourselves, just like that unreliable friend, if we set plans with ourselves and we don't follow through on those plans, we may begin to start viewing ourselves like that flaky friend or that dude who just is not sugar honey iced tea, okay? This is a public platform, so I'm going to keep it cute. But you know what I'm saying. If you were stuck in this vicious cycle of saying that you are going to, for example, file your LLC paperwork for your small business or submit your application to go back to grad school or start that exercise regimen that you've been putting off. When you're stuck in this cycle and you look back on the days, weeks, months, and years that have passed between you having this intention, making the plans, and not following through on them, it could be very painful to experience the negative feelings and the self-doubt, self-loathing, and self-sabotage that comes along with it, that comes along with that cycle. You may be thinking things like, I don't have any willpower, or I never follow through on things, what is wrong with me? Or it may sound like, oh, I'll just do it later, but then again, I'm always procrastinating, so I probably won't. Or I've never been able to do it before. I've tried a million times, so I'm just going to save my energy. And I've been there. And honestly, if I don't catch myself in some areas, I still fall into this trap in some areas of my life. And I know from experience that if the normal way you respond to your goals and the plans that you set for yourself is to not follow through on your commitments, it's going to take intervening in that cycle to make a change. And that intervention, just straight up, is going to be uncomfortable. You're not going to want to feel like it. You're going to be tempted to watch YouTube videos and scroll through Instagram, take a break and do everything but follow through on those plans, okay? Like, it's going to be uncomfortable. You're not going to want to do it. It's going to be a fight and a battle with your brain to a degree. At least you can probably anticipate and expect that. However, that doesn't mean that it can't be done, and it doesn't mean that it's not important to intervene in this cycle. So in this video, I gave you 3 reasons why you probably aren't following through on your goals. You're probably avoiding negative feelings. You're likely leaning into confusion instead of clarity. And or you're stuck in a cycle of self-doubt, self-sabotage because you've developed the habit of procrastinating on certain tasks. So if you're struggling to manage your time, check out my video about the time management mistakes that I made while I was managing graduate school as a married mom, and what I would do differently looking back on this time now that I'm a professor and I have completed my PhD. Thank you so much for watching. I will catch up with you in the next video.